Just notice, guys, when you watch this, as we watch this, that there's going to be a lot of pearl clutching from Piers Morgan, a lot of whining, and how dare you? He's got a family. But like they don't care at all about all the Palestinians that have been massacred in Gaza. Not at all. And then there's going to be a lot of, yeah, but what about the billionaire? Yeah, but what about actually there's going to be a lot of, they're trying this thing I noticed on mainstream media that a lot of the elites are doing is they're trying out this new line. They're like kind of workshopping it, kind of beta testing it, seeing that if it'll work, like focus grouping it to see that if they can make it more sympathetic by saying he came from a working class background. Like you'll notice it. If you pay attention, you'll notice that a lot of the pundits that are pearl clutching over this are using this line over and over again. Oh, the Luigi guy was an elite because he went to an elite college and was from a wealthy family, but the multimillionaire CEO who makes a living off of denying people life-saving care, he's actually the good guy because he's the one that's from a working class background. See, so you got to take his side. Like it's propaganda and it's actually really bad, lazy propaganda. Like you think that you're going to trick working class people into take his side if you say that he grew up in Minnesota or wherever the fuck. But like people know what time it is. People know what time it is. We know that CEOs in general are villains.
He's a father, and he's being gunned down in the middle of Manhattan. Why does that make you joyful?
Of Americans that be murdered. So are the tens of thousands of Americans, innocent Americans, who died because greedy health insurance executives like this one push a policies of denying care to the most vulnerable people.
Well, there was a massive global backlash to Taylor Lorenz and her joyful admission. But not everyone's lost their moral compass. Taylor did attempt to dig herself out of a hole, but ended up even deeper inside it.
Challenging her moral
I take that back. Joyful is the wrong word, Piers.
You think?
But I said, as I clarified, yeah.
You think joyful is the wrong word? Yeah.
I'd
say it is.
Vindicated and celebratory because, again, it feels like justice in this system when somebody responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands of Americans.
Tommy Lahiran's grimace said it all there. Whether it's joy, celebration, vindication, or justice, it's all plainly wrong. There are clearly problems with the US healthcare system. Some big problems. Medical debt is the biggest cause of bankruptcy. Thousands of people die every year because they lack insurance. That's not good enough. We don't have that problem in my country, for example. But cheering for the death of an innocent man because he decided that he's a symbol of those problems is cheering for anarchy. Luigi Mangione has now been charged with a murder, shouting that his case is an insult to the intelligence of the American people.
It's completely out of touch. And it's an insult to the intelligence of the American people. It's lived experience.
Today, some lunatic liberal women are bizarrely publicly drooling over what they perceive to be the hot assassin. The real insult to American intelligence is this infantilizing celebration of someone who committed.
That women don't do that all the time with convicts. There's like an actual like thing where women will like write letters to convicts. You know, the Boston bomber has like a huge fan club of women who think he's hot. Like, stop acting like this is like without precedent.
Allegedly, a cold-blooded execution in the middle of Manhattan. Now, compare the reaction from the left to the case of Daniel Penny, a US Marine Corps veteran who was finally acquitted of all charges for the death of Jordan Neely.
I didn't want any type of attention or praise, and I still don't. The guilt I would have felt if someone did get hurt, if he did do what he was threatening to do, would never be able to live with myself. And I'll take $1 million.
This is also so bad faith because no one is mad that this guy stepped in to subdue Jordan Neely, who was having a mental health episode. They're mad that he killed him, that he held him for 6 minutes, which was wholly unnecessary when there were other people on the train also helping subdue him. That's why people are mad. Like, it's always such like a straw man with these people. All right.
Court appearances and people calling
Janine Pirro sitting there all drunk.
And people hating me just to keep one of those people from getting hurt.
Well, Neely was a tragic figure, that there's no doubt, a homeless drug addict and convict from a broken home. The system failed him. His family structures failed him. That wasn't why he died. He died because he was very aggressively threatening passengers on the subway, yelling he was ready to die or go to jail and was prepared to potentially kill people.
More fucking bullshit from these people. First of all, again, no one is mad that he got subdued. They're mad that they held him for 6 minutes. I am a New Yorker. I take the subway frequently. I have been assaulted by unhoused people. I have been on the subway when someone scary was on there screaming and shouting. Yeah, I don't think I would have been mad had he just subdued him, because yes, being in that situation can be scary. But at a certain point, once you had him and somebody else was helping you, you should have let go of him and allowed somebody to come in. That's what we're saying. How many felonies did he have? Who's saying that? Like, this is a straw man again, defending like, oh, well, he had a lot of felonies. Okay, yeah, he had a lot of felonies. That's not good. And it's not good that he was on the train having a mental health episode and threatening people. I have no doubt he probably was doing that. I have encountered people like that many times. But the solution is not to kill them. Like, I want them to get help. I don't want them dead.
To afford that eventuality. Daniel Penny placed him in a chokehold to restrain him. Other passengers who were on that train testified that they were terrified by Neely. They were grateful that Penny intervened. We used to call that kind of behavior brave, a good Samaritan.
No,
but Penny has been condemned by critics. Activist Tim Wise called him a racist, classist, ableist murderer. And on the steps of the courtroom, there was this.
We need some black vigilantes.
That's right.
People want to jump up and choke us and kill us for being loud. How about we do the same when they attempt to oppress us?
Right.
I'm tired.
Not a mention of what Neely was actually doing to terrorize the passengers on that subway, including women and children. People do not want to randomly jump up and choke you for being loud. That is race baiting and an incitement to violence. We're sick of it. Both of these debates are complicated because of the systemic problems they represent.
That's not race baiting. That's not race baiting. Basically, you're accusing him of race baiting because he's black. Like, him being upset that people are murdered like this is not race baiting. He just happens to be black. You're the one making it a thing because he's black. You're race baiting, actually. Or dismissing it as race baiting because you don't see him as important as white people or the White House.
For those on the extreme left who have apparently lost their minds this week, let me make it very simple. Protecting terrified subway riders from a violent criminal is good. Murdering a businessman because you don't like his business is bad.
Shut up.
Well, to debate this, I'm joined by Natalie Winters, co-host of Steve Bannon's War Room, Clay Travis, founder of Outkick, Brianna Joy Gray, the host of the Bad Faith podcast, and Wajahat Ali, the host of Democracy-ish. So, Wajahat, let me start with you. I found Taylor Lorenz's performance on Monday night on the show utterly staggering. She was already in hot water for celebrating the death of this executive. To then say that her honest, genuine response to what happened was one of joy. And it was unambiguous. She may have recanted it when she realized what she'd said, but she said it in the moment. She meant it. She felt joyful that an executive, a husband.
Again, bad faith. She was not saying she was joyful that a man died. She was saying that she was joyful at the fact that people were outraged on all sides of the aisle over our healthcare system, and we were finally having that conversation and calling it out for what it is. That's what she was saying she was joyful over. And then she clarified to say it wasn't that it was joyful. It was that she didn't care or have empathy. Which, why should she?
A father of two children have been executed in the streets of...
Call me when they start to have empathy for all the Americans that they're responsible for their deaths from denying them health care. Call me then.
Manhattan. What would you say about that?
Yeah, so three things. Number one, I can only speak for myself. For one, I can't speak for the panel or anyone else. I'm against vigilante violence. I think it's bad for a democratic society when people, especially in a country that has more guns than individuals, take matters in their own hand and kill unarmed individuals. I think personally that's wrong.
What you don't understand, Wajahat Ali, is that, and what you seem not to understand, is that I don't think most people want to deal with vigilante justice either. We would prefer it go through the system. The problem is, we live in a country that even though we call it a democracy, it's not. And we are at the point where no one, everybody, feel like, I don't know anyone who really feels like we live in a fair democracy that is not corrupt and where we are fairly represented by our representatives. We're not. And people know it. People know that our system is corrupt. People know the Supreme Court is a corrupt joke. on sale for the highest bidder. People know that our Congress is incredibly corrupt, on sale to the highest bidder, including the healthcare companies. They know that they're owned by the corporations. People understand that we live in a country that is incredibly corrupt and that they serve the interests of the elites and the powerful and not the people. And people feel like helpless to do anything to change the system and how corrupt it is. So stop pretending like you don't understand that.
Secondly, it's not just a left thing, because Taylor does not represent the left as one person. I'm against the murder of Brian Thompson. I thought it was a brutal, targeted murder. And I, for one, did not celebrate the murder, just like I did not celebrate a violent insurrection against our free and fair elections, where people, some with weapons, attacked the Capitol Police. And then that Capitol Police that was defending the U.S. Capitol and senators was mocked and ridiculed by people on the right. And then finally, I'm really curious, Piers, and I'm sure you are as well. We have some gray hairs. I have never seen this type of response. The fact that this is the one thing that has united so many Americans. When I'm talking about the response to Brian Thompson's murder, you've seen people from the left, from the right, every ethnicity, every gender, people sitting there, and instead of having empathy, you see outrage. Sometimes you see celebration. You see people on social media, on TikTok, on Twitch, on Facebook, using their own, face, saying, this is what's happening. And this is where I think we should really reflect upon, why are so many Americans, so many otherwise decent people, not necessarily feeling empathy, also sometimes being celebratory over the murder of a United Healthcare CEO. And I think you talked about it, touched upon it. It's because in this country, so many Americans, because we have such a broken system where we pay so much money, don't have access to healthcare, are denied health insurance, right? They're denied medical treatment. They're denied life-saving medications. United Healthcare has denied 32%, more so than any other company, and they base it on an algorithm. There is a festering resentment and anger and rage that I think has to be confronted. And if you are a CEO or a 1%, you don't have to justify any of this, but you have to look at the reaction, Piers, and say, this is what's happening in America. Why are so many people united? I mean, there was literally on Twitter yesterday when they arrested Luigi, right? There was hashtag free him and pardon. That is something that has to be confronted, and why you see a simmering rage against the 1%, the elitists, and the billionaires.
Okay, Blake Travis, I mean, let me confront that first off, which is, it shouldn't need to be confronted. It's disgusting. If you celebrate the death of an executive of a company whose policies you don't agree with,
I like how he
you're disgusting. You're inhumane.
Right by everything the guy said, that Wajahad said. Amazing. Like, he actually points out, you should be asking yourself why people feel this way. You should be understanding why people from all across the aisle are not sympathetic to this, and in some cases celebrating it. Why people are looking at Luigi Mangiano as a hero and saying free him. You should be asking yourself this. And he's like, I don't need to ask myself this. I don't need to. It's despicable. And then here's going to come Clay Travis, the bootlicker to the Israeli regime and the wealthy and the 1%. And he's going to tell you how actually this is really awful, and it's just the left, even though it's very clear that it's not just the left, it's across the political spectrum. And how, listen, he's in the Israeli regime and who has free healthcare as a result of our tax dollars, and how we don't celebrate, we don't celebrate death as he walks around in a country that's committing a genocide against the Palestinians as we speak.
If you lack any empathy and are proud of that, or you feel joyful, you are inhumane. It is wrong. I don't care who it is, what political divide they come from, what the policies are. You don't execute people in the street, and you don't get celebrated when you do that.
I agree.
But secondly, Clay, I would say this. This extraordinary phenomenon of so many liberal women brazenly talking about the hot assassin, as if somehow the fact that he was good looking in some way is the most important aspect of this.
A hot assassin is bonkers to me, Piers. That this would take off as it has is utterly ridiculous. But look, I mean, this was a cold-blooded murder that we were all able to watch take place on the video monitors in Midtown Manhattan. And
notice that Piers Morgan always interrupts the people who are either not Zionist, pro-Palestinian, or liberal or left on his panel. He always interrupts them. But all the Zionists and the right-wingers, he never interrupts. Paisan. I actually know what Paisan means because I just finished watching The Sopranos again. Luigi is American. He's not Italian. He's Italian-American. Of course he's American. But we're talking about ethnically, he is Italian. Italian-American. The Italian stallion. The Paisan.
thing I would point out is two things that usually happen. One, I do think there's a deeper story here. This is a incredibly privileged, it appears to be alleged, but seems like he is the killer based on all the evidence. He went to a $40,000 a year high school. He has double degrees from an Ivy League institution. He has all the advantages and privileges that a rich kid.
This is what this moron thinks is the deeper story. Really? Now, remember, guys, these are supposedly the everyday American anti-elite right-wingers on alternative media that are trying to sell you this bullshit. Don't forget, okay? People like Clay Travis, this hack, it tries to constantly sell people that he is anti-establishment, but he is nothing more than a bootlicker of that establishment that he pretends to criticize. He just doesn't like Democrats, but he loves the establishment. I like how he goes, the deeper story is the fact that Luigi went to a wealthy school, a prep school. Nah, bitch, this is not the deeper story. That is not the deeper story. And again, I told you guys this earlier, a second ago. I know, Jamon, I was laughing so hard at that meme too. End of story. The Sopranos meme. But also, sorry guys, I need to get a way more comfortable chair than this one eventually. Okay, but the other thing is, it's so funny that he's like, this is a deeper story about like him being rich. Like I told you guys this earlier, they're trying to create a narrative, elites in the media, especially like right-wing elites, Republican elites, they're trying to create this narrative that what this is about and why you should be on the side of the rich and the health insurance companies is because he was rich and the CEO grew up middle class. Nice try. You think we're stupid? Do you think we're stupid? I mean, you do, but that's because you're stupid and you don't. No, you are. And you don't understand what's actually happening in this country because you guys are disconnected from reality and you're elites yourselves.
That in America would have. And he killed an executive who was the son of lower middle class, it appears, parents who worked his way up based on his own individual merit and accolades. And so you have this incredible, if you want to talk about white privilege, this assassin is maybe the definition of white privilege.
That's so funny. Now they're trying to lean into white privilege. I always say this to you guys. The Republicans complain about identity politics, but holy shit, do they love it. The second the Republicans feel they can weaponize identity politics, they are right there. They are right there. Oh, actually, he's the one who had white privilege in defense of this billionaire industry or this multi-billion-dollar industry and this multi-million-dollar CEO. He worked hard, came from lower middle class, worked his way up. It's like, I don't give a fuck. His job is to literally sign off on decisions and maximize profit for a company that gets people killed. You think just because he does it in a suit that makes it any less of a murder? You think because he does it in a suit it makes it any less violent, any less criminal? He worked his way up. He worked his way up so that he could head a company that maximizes profit by denying people care and getting them killed. And we're supposed to admire that.
And he also used a gun. And usually anytime we have a shooting like this, almost immediately we hear that we need to have gun control. It appears this may have been a gun that he created using some sort of 3D creation. That is some sort of advanced technology. And we don't hear anything about gun control, and we don't hear anything about white privilege. And so in addition to the fact that a lot of crazy, broken-brained left-wing women like Taylor Lorenz can't find any man, so they decide to get all turned on by assassins, it's I think, evidence of how the left wing's brain is broken.
You guys notice how they're trying to use identity politics for this, right? So then he starts talking about how, oh, it's because Taylor Lorenz is a single liberal white woman. What does that have to do with anything? Bitch, I'm married. Okay? I'm married. I'm happily married. And yeah, I don't disagree with anything that Taylor Lorenz said. I agree with everything she said. And yeah, and I'm married. And everybody there are people that feel this way all over the political spectrum, as I said. But see how he's trying to make it about identity politics, about white liberal single women? Fuck out of here.
and they will use any situation to try to justify that
What
which is
your
unjustified.
identity
Yeah, Brianna, let me bring you in. Welcome to Uncensored. I believe it's your debut, so great to have you. Just on the, before we get to the shooting and the way it's been celebrated and so on, this whole issue of the hot assassin. I made the point on X earlier. Had this shooter executed a female CEO,
yeah, but this is also great because, like I said earlier about Brianna Joy Gray, I really love what a good debater she is, and that she doesn't get distracted by nonsense. Like, he does what he typically does, as you'll see here, and he tries to cut her off. He talks over her. He tries to mischaracterize what she's saying, and she just steamrolls, even though you can't really hear her as well because he's talking over her, but she steamrolls like right over his bullshit. She's very good at this.
Company, of a healthcare company. I don't think any women on the left would have gone public and talked about what a hot assassin he was. Do you?
I frankly don't know that that's true. And I also think we can't erase how many men are also thirsting, frankly, after the claims adjuster, or as you have been describing him, the hot assassin, Luigi Mangione. But I think the real point is that both sides of the establishment political aisle are desperate to make this a conversation about something other than the fact that we have perhaps the most perverse healthcare system, or insurance system is a more accurate way to put it, compared to every other similarly wealthy country in the world. The reason you're seeing this outrage and sometimes kind of performative thirsting for the shooter.
Actually, she's right. We shouldn't call it a healthcare system. We should call it an insurance system, because it doesn't have anything to do with healthcare.
Is exactly because 68,000 people every year in the United States of America die because people like Brian Thompson, who run companies like United Healthcare, deny insurance claims that could have saved the lives of their loved ones. And while there were a lot of words spent talking about the fear, the real fear of the people on the subway who had encountered Jordan Neely, it's important to note that Jordan Neely hadn't physically engaged with anybody on the subway.
Well, I'm going to come to Jordan. Just to be clear, I'm going to come to. Let's separate the two stories, though.
That was just an aside. So much words, passion, empathy was directed in that direction. But Brian Thompson's actual crimes of having a direct connection to mass death and suffering for tens of thousands of Americans on a yearly basis,
well, you said crimes.
Going under-examined.
Well, okay, you said crimes. What was the crime?
Unfortunately, the United States, our legal system is designed by people in power who enrich themselves, who don't make denying people's health care that results in mass death.
Yeah, but you called it a crime, though. You called it a crime, but it wasn't a crime. He wasn't a convicted criminal.
I would define it colloquially as a crime. And the fact that Luigi allegedly took matters into his own hands is because no political system or legal system in the United States of America.
It's a crime against humanity, okay? Like, I love how he's like, well, it's not a crime. Technically, it ain't a crime. It's not a crime, is it? Well, that's kind of the point of this conversation, Piers, is that it is not a crime when it should be, because it is a crime against humanity. And the question is, why is it allowed? What a joke.
America has been willing to step up.
See, we don't even know that, do we?
The mass murder that's been executed on the part of the American healthcare system.
I would say, look, we don't know really enough about this guy yet. It looks to me like he's a bit of a narcissist.
What do you mean?
I think he was a narcissist. I think that he was clearly unhinged. I'm not sure that he's the great Robin Hood. Hang on.
Which guy? Sorry.
Hang on. Luigi, the shooter, right?
Brian Thompson.
The one who shot Brian Thompson, Luigi, right? I'm just not sure that he's this great, heroic guy standing up against the healthcare system. I suspect.
Well, I'm not talking about that. This isn't about Luigi, who may or may not, he's been arrested, he's been charged. We may or may not know that he's the actual shooter. I'm talking about the public reaction to Brian Thompson's death.
No, I understand that.
We do know about Brian Thompson.
I understand that.
We know about United Healthcare. And that's the root of the discontent. That's the root of the public outcry. Luigi is just a vessel through which people are expressing their deep frustrations with the American healthcare system. So the question is, if you don't want murders like this to be happening, assassinations to be happening like this in the street, I'm someone who does not believe in the death penalty and don't condone these kinds of vigilante instances of violence in either case. But if you want to get to the root of why people are so deeply unhappy, you have to, or it resonates so deeply with people that this has happened, you have to get to the root of why there's this deep well of tragedy, despair, and outrage in the United States of America. And that has to do with what Brian Thompson has chosen to do with companies like United Healthcare
just to be clear,
the American people.
But just to be clear, before I go to Natalie to respond to that, do you feel any empathy for Brian Thompson?
Her comment was spot on, but he just kept trying to talk over her because he doesn't, like I said, whenever it's anybody even like to the left of fucking this guy, this loser, or the Steve Bannon, talking head, he lets them talk uninterrupted. But when it's anybody slightly on the left, he'll interrupt them ad nauseum.
Thompson and his family?
I have infinite empathy for any individual as a person in their personal capacity, as well as the CEO of United Healthcare. I'm afraid I'm with the overwhelming majority, bipartisan majority of the American people who say, I'm saving my empathy for people who are much more vulnerable and have caused a lot of harm.
So to be clear, you don't have any empathy for him after he was executed?
I personally don't.
Right. Okay. Well, at least you're honest. Let me go to Natalie Winters. I mean, I find this staggering. You've got to remember, the left is supposed to be the party that cares so much. All of them have their "Be Kind" hashtags. They're the caring ones, the kind ones, and they can't even bring it in their hearts to say they find a shred of empathy for a man who's just been executed, who's the father of children, the husband of a loving wife, and so on. I find that just staggering that you can't, on a human level, have empathy for the murder of someone, but also make your point about the system in which he was an executive. What's your response?
It's so faux. It's so faux concern. This is so like cringe, and it's so transparent. You guys literally defend the murder of Palestinian babies. Literally. You sit here and you defend Palestinian children getting burned alive and shot in the neck. And now you want to pearl clutch and lecture us about immorality and humanity? Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Thank you, Gang Green Thumb, for the super chat. Can't find any man, so they get all turned on by assassins. This is exactly why incels can't get laid. Yes, for real. I am fresh out of tolerance for the selective empathy from these goons. Like, you guys have showed your whole ass. You have not given a fuck about the Palestinians as they've been genocided for over a year. Children. And then they turn around and go, oh, where's your empathy? Where's yours?
I mean, it's absolutely shocking. And look what it gets to the core of is the continued dehumanization of people, because in the sort of culturally Marxist paradigm of oppressor versus oppressed, you're allowed to do whatever you want to someone who has allegedly, or in this case, I'm not a supporter of the United States healthcare system apparatus, believe me.
LOL. Did you hear that? She said, this is what we're talking about with the dehumanization. Now you're concerned about dehumanization? Now you're concerned about dehumanization. This is what we can't stand. This is what we can't abide. So you're concerned about dehumanization when it comes to a rich CEO, but not when it comes to Palestinian children. Got it.
There's so many problems that need to be fixed and adjusted there, but condoning, which is in effect what these two panelists are doing, the assassination of him by a roundabout way by saying, well, the healthcare system, you just told me that you had absolutely no empathy and that you think what people are doing by gunning down healthcare executives because of bad.
Not having empathy and condoning are two different things.
I just said that I do not condone vigilante violence.
She literally just said it. This girl's just lying. There is a big difference between condoning something and not having empathy.
In either instance. So don't misrepresent my view. If you can make your case without telling a lie, miss, then you should do it. I have empathy for the 68 million Americans and their families who are killed every single year by the United healthcare system.
Don't talk over each other. We can't hear you. Okay, look, listen, Brian, I'll let you speak, Brian. Let Natalie have her say, and then I'll let people respond.
By the way, if you think Luigi Mangione is someone who you maybe have empathy or sympathy for, this is someone who had a very privileged upbringing, background, very wealthy family. The CEO of United Healthcare is someone who came from a working class family, went to state schools, didn't go to the University of Pennsylvania. Like I said, I'm not defending the healthcare system writ large, but to say
she just did it too. They're in unison. They got together to test out these talking points. You see what I'm saying? And you'll hear it more. Now that we've pointed it out, you will hear it more. You'll notice it more. That people all over the media, the elites that are defending this, all have their talking points in play now where they're like, oh, actually, he was rich. Okay, he was rich. So that's why you should defend the healthcare industry.
Say that you don't have empathy because you view him as an oppressor of the American people is a perversion, not just of the system of law and justice in this country, but that's extreme. You just said you don't have empathy for a man who was murdered in cold blood on the streets of New York. So what do you have for him? Sympathy?
This oppressed language. It seems to be a bit of a kink.
You are so much so that you just said you don't have empathy for a murder victim.
I said, let me be clear. I said, as a person, interpersonally, of course, he has a family, and those people are feeling grief, and those people, as far as I know, are innocent in all of this. But the question is, here's the real question. Why are we asking random pundits, who might personally have been victimized, by the way, by someone like Brian Thompson, why they would have empathy for him and their family, while there's no question being asked about who has empathy for the tens of thousands of Americans who are killed every year by the policies that Brian Thompson has made millions and millions, tens of millions of dollars of them. Why are we talking about the fact that this 25-year-old, 26-year-old alleged perpetrator, went to an Ivy League school when obviously he was so still financially betrayed, or obviously none of the facts will come out. But the fact that someone who is relatively privileged in the United States of America can still feel so overwhelmed by our healthcare system that they would go to these lengths, that people who are relatively affluent still find themselves in medical bankruptcy, as you so rightly pointed out earlier, Piers Morgan, that 50% of families that have a cancer diagnosis in their family in the United States of America go bankrupt. That is where the moral outrage should lie. But
listen, don't get me wrong. Listen, I think,
Piers who have wealthy, affluent health, the focus seems to be on the family of the millionaire and not on the families of the people who have been terrorized by the healthcare system.
You made your point. Listen, I'm in London at the moment. In the UK, we have the National Health Service. It's free healthcare for all. You know, so I find the whole system in America completely baffling. That a country of your size and power and economic muscle can't have a better system where people don't fall through the cracks in such large numbers. I completely agree. But that is a separate issue to the execution of someone in the street. Clay, I can see you were rolling your eyes
But it's
there.
not a separate issue.
Well, let me bring Clay in.
It is a separate. Piers, I'm in Israel right now. I just been touring a lot of the kibbutzes where there were people who were murdered because they were Jewish. I can't help but see the analogy here. You can be upset with a larger societal issue. It does not justify murdering people because of it. And if you are making that argument, and Brianna is making that argument, I'm sorry, her brain is broken, because what she is saying is, I'm so upset about the healthcare system that I believe that assassinating an innocent person who has never been convicted of any crime in cold blood on the streets of Manhattan is okay. Then your brain is broken. If you don't have empathy,
that's
for
not what I'm
father,
saying. And the audience is intelligent enough to have heard what I've actually said.
You said you didn't have empathy for the killing of a man because you were upset about the larger societal issue of healthcare. That is not any different than you saying when you are seeing what happens when someone is killed because they're Jewish, that you're not happy about the situation here. It's
do millions of Americans who've been victimized by Brian
a larger societal issue that you don't like. And by the way, this is not a healthcare debate.
Yeah, I want to play two.
It is a healthcare debate.
Hang on.
It's a murder debate.
Yeah,
it's a murder debate, not a healthcare debate.
People are not excited about. Wait a minute. People are not excited about murder. There are thousands of murders that happen, maybe not thousands, hundreds, whatever, dozens of murders that happen every day in the United States of America. So, and those perpetrators are not being celebrated by the public. The public right now is feeling empathy for Luigi. They are feeling some kind of catharsis, schadenfreude, whatever you want to call it.
You're feeling empathy for an executioner, but not the person he executed.
He's a cold-blooded assassin. No one should be feeling empathy for him. He's a rich kid with a broken brain, probably like you.
Okay, I want to play two clips now. I want to play, first of all, a mashup of the reaction to our Taylor Lorenz Joy clip, which has gone very big in America. Let's watch this.
That is this ideology. She has joy for a guy getting murdered in the streets of New York.
I just feel like saying that you feel joy over someone getting assassinated, like even if you do feel that way, I just don't think it's helpful to say that.
She in her mind is like, a man that worked for a company at the highest levels died, so she feels joy. Okay.
And now this woman is all over online on her subs.
Oh, yeah. Let's take into consideration the very important things Megyn Kelly has to say. Like, seriously, get out of here. All this, again, pearl clutching. And then the guy's like, this isn't about the healthcare. This isn't a healthcare debate. Yes, it is. It's just that you guys are trying to desperately make it not about healthcare. That's it. This is not a healthcare debate. No, you just wish it weren't a healthcare debate, and you're doing everything you can to make it not a healthcare debate. You don't want it to be a healthcare debate because your benefactors and the people that pay your salary don't like that. Of course, Tim Pool takes the side of the healthcare companies, Bootlicker.
Stacking elsewhere, trying to justify this man's murder, and goes on with Piers Morgan on his YouTube show last night.
Wow, we have a real problem in this country. The left has a real problem.
But there is something deeper, a sickness that is going on in our political class. That's exemplified by the absolute nut job, Taylor Lorenz, who used to work for the Washington Post. She appeared on Piers Morgan yesterday, and she said that she felt actual joy when the United Health.
You guys haven't gone and seen his original video about this and the comment section under it and the ratio, go watch it and read the comments. They're amazing. They're hilarious. Like, his own audience like owns him in the comments.
CEO was murdered on the street.
No, well, John, before I come to you, I want to play Joe Rogan, who interestingly had this take.
I don't think this guy was a professional. I think this guy, if I had to guess, some guy got fucked over. Apparently that company is really bad on denying claims.
34% denial rate.
The normal's like 16. Yeah. So those guys.
I don't think anybody's going to like be crying too hard over that guy.
Yeah, maybe his family, but that's about it. Yeah. It's a dirty business. The business of insurance is fucking gross.
No, John, I mean, it's interesting there. Joe Rogan, he didn't come out and say he felt joyful, but certainly no great tears being shed, no great expression of sympathy. And as Brianna, I mean, I wouldn't have phrased it the way she did, and I think to admit you have no empathy for someone to be murdered is very bizarre.
Joe Rogan and I had the same take.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm about to make the point.
Joe Rogan and I had the exact same
Allow me to conduct my own interviews, Brianna, if you don't mind. Which I mean, there's not a massive amount of difference in response there. So is there a point here that the issue of healthcare in America,
people that are on the left with hostility, like, he never does that to right-wing guests who interrupt. When he has a right-wing guest or a Zionist lunatic on his panel, he won't go, let me conduct the interview, thank you, or interrupt them the way he interrupts them. It's like ridiculous. And yet he actually is still pretending not to be a right-winger. Like, LOL, get the fuck out of here. We all know you're a right-winger. Like, stop this charade.
Angering so many Americans because of these denial rates and so on, that this was almost an inevitable conclusion to this, that somebody at some stage was going to turn violent.
Yeah, let me respond to Clay, your question, and also the clips. First and foremost, I for one have said that I'm against vigilante violence. I have the capacity to feel empathy for unarmed individuals who get killed. What I find fascinating about the framing is, where is the pearl clutching? Where is the outrage? It seems very selective, right? So if you're in Israel, Clay, I'm glad you're there. Talk to everyone. Go visit the West Bank and talk to Palestinians if you truly want to have empathy. When we talk about framing, right? I think Clay said, just because you're angry about a system doesn't give you the right to commit vigilante violence. I agree. Just because you're angry and you...
Clay Travis just looks like he saw a ghost. He's like, oh shit, he said the word Palestinian. Ah, that's awkward. I'm in an apartheid regime that's currently committing a genocide against the Palestinians, and I'm defending a healthcare CEO while we pay for the healthcare of the Israelis. Eee. Yes, indeed. Indeed, Clay.
You think that Donald Trump won the 2020 election, that he lost, it does not give you the right to be part of an incited violent insurrection where you hurt and harm Capitol Police, take a shit in the U.S. Capitol. Some people come armed to assassinate people. By the way, just over the weekend, Donald Trump said he would pardon those people, traitors, violent insurrectionists who he called hostages. I see no condemnation. I see celebration from the right. Another story about murder, how common it is. Another Daniel Perry, a white man, a veteran. He was convicted, Piers, just a couple of months ago, he was convicted by a jury of our peers for killing an unarmed white man who was attending a BLM rally with his black girlfriend. Governor Abbott of Texas, do you know what happened? The story no one talks about. Governor Abbott of Texas pardoned this man who was convicted by a jury for killing an unarmed white man. MAGA celebrates it. So when do we celebrate and when do we not? And right now, to go to your question, this comment that Joe said and what Brianna said and what I said is the reaction to the murder of Brian Thompson is what I'm fascinated about. It is
right, and it is all selective humanity, because they cheered when Kyle Rittenhouse killed 2 white protesters at a BLM rally. They cheered when Greg Abbott pardoned the killing of an unarmed white guy at a BLM rally who was with his black girlfriend. They cheer the deaths of Palestinian babies. They cheer the deaths of people that they don't like and people that they don't view as worthy of humanity. But then when it comes to rich people, Israelis, the 1%, the ruling class, then all of a sudden it's, where's your humanity, Nat, man? Where's the humanity?
inevitable, I believe, to answer your question directly.
Clay Travis looks so embarrassing. He looks like confused and constipated at the very same time.
In a country, the most powerful, wealthy country on earth, right? That where we pay more money than any other country for healthcare, where so many people, so many adults, their number one debt, Piers, is medical debt. I had a daughter who is a stage 4 cancer survivor. She's 5 years on, she's cancer-free, full liver transplant, she's a little diva. A person like myself, Piers, the only reason I had insurance is through my wife, who's a doctor. We're pretty privileged compared to most people. If I wasn't able to get help from my family and friends, I would be in debt. I would be $200,000 in debt. Piers, I had to do a GoFundMe, and that's me, a person with relative privilege. So look at the reaction right now. And I keep...
Think about how insane that is. Wajahat Ali is a pundit. He is probably decently financially well off. And yet, if it weren't for his family and friends and him having a GoFundMe, he would have been in $200,000 worth of debt. The number one reason for bankruptcy in this country is medical debt. This is insanity. And we pay for our insurance. So we pay on the front end and we pay on the back end, and then they deny us care. Like, this is insane.
Telling people for CEOs.
It's actually insane that we accept it. It's insane that we accept it, that we let this continue.
I mean this sincerely. If you are in healthcare, if you're a billionaire, if you are a CEO, if you're a 1%, look at the bipartisan rage from Brianna to Joe Rogan about the healthcare system, where, you know, millions of Americans, Piers, I don't think they're evil. I'm telling you, I've never seen anything like this in my life. I know deeply empathetic people who looked at this murder and said, I feel bad for Brian, but you know what? United Healthcare screwed over a lot of people.
Okay.
I have a story.
Okay.
And the system has to change.
Well, listen, I think the system has got to change. I totally agree with that. Let me bring Natalie. I want to pivot to Daniel Penny now, because it really has been a tale of two vigilante stories, very different stories in my estimation. You know, I'm very pleased that Daniel Perry was acquitted of committing Penny was committed of any crime, because I believe he was a hero. I believe that he was a Marine veteran on the subway who recognized a dangerous situation. He knew nothing about Jordan Neely's background at all. He didn't know that he was a homeless man or he had mental health issues. He didn't know that he had a criminal record as long as his arm, 40 plus offenses, including several involving violence, including against old people. He didn't know anything. All he knew was this guy was ranting and raving.
So what exactly is relative privilege? I think what he means by that is like the privilege of the fact that he is pretty known. He is a pundit on TV, that he probably is not wealthy, but more well off than most people is what he probably means. Like relative privilege. Like he probably is in the top 5% of income earners, where which still is like a lot of money, but it's nothing in comparison to like the billionaire class. Like the wealth gap in this country is insane. So that I'm assuming that's what he means. Because that's the thing about this whole healthcare conversation is that it's not just poor people, it's not just working class people that this affects. This affects like upper middle class people too, because even people who maybe have more money, let's say somebody like him, and I'll guess, let's say he makes like $400,000 a year, $500,000 a year, let's say, maybe he makes closer to $1 million. He still has to pay for exorbitant healthcare or insurance, I should say. Stop calling it healthcare.
Talking about killing people, prepared to die, prepared to go to prison for the rest of his life. And in that moment, the military instinct kicked in. It seems to me, I've got a lot of military in my family. It kicked in instinctively. He knew how to restrain him, and he did restrain him. And tragically, Jordan Neely ends up dying. He was high on drugs at the time, but he ends up dying. And I can absolutely have empathy for the death of Jordan Neely. It shouldn't have happened. It was a tragedy, but it was an accident. And Daniel Penny did not want to kill him.
Was it an accident, though? I mean, 6 minutes is a long time. That's kind of the point. And yeah, you're right. Somebody said, what about Sonia Massey? That's a good point. There was not nearly enough outrage about what happened to Sonia Massey. She was literally just a woman in her own home, and a cop shot her in the face. Like, disgusting. Cold. You want to talk about cold-blooded murder? And they were showing cold blood. She was shot in cold blood by police that were supposed to protect her. She was the one who called the police because she was scared. Where's the outrage for that? Seems like you have selective humanity here.
Obviously, he wanted to stop him potentially killing the passengers, women and children. I was struck by the fact that of the 11 eyewitnesses who gave evidence, 9 of them said it was the most terrifying experience they'd ever had.
Now we care about women.
Not what Daniel Penny did, what Jordan Neely was doing before Daniel Penny apprehended him and and got him under control. So I don't understand how anyone who looks at this with a logical, common sense brain could possibly construct any argument that says this is the new George Floyd, this was a white supremacist, as they called him, a racist who only picked on Jordan Neely because of his skin color, and by the way, the system betrayed Jordan Neely, and all these things. Really? I just see a deranged, violent guy with a long criminal record threatening to kill people, and somebody, thank God, stepped in to stop him from potentially carrying out his threat.
You also don't see that systemic violence. Oh, sorry.
Hang on, Jai. This is
no, I'm sorry.
I will come to all of you. Don't worry. I will come to all of you.
No, it's the same old tired playbook that they've always been using. I mean, it's just race baiting. In this case, they're effectively, I think, trying to start a race war. If you look at the way from NAACP to BLM to left-wing outlets have framed this, they always portray the man who died as some Michael Jackson street performer, and Daniel Penny as, a former Marine, right? You can see it in the analytical way that they're approaching this. But I think
she thought that was a banger too. No, it's not. They also are lying when they say that. They're the ones trying to constantly stoke a race war. No one's trying to start a race war. The only people here talking about race wars are right-wingers who want it.
Even as something that's much worse than this. And what I mean is that you have progressive elites who have pushed soft on crime, that's an understatement, policies, proposals that lead to the continual release and bailing out of people who've been arrested on 42 separate crimes, including attempted abductions of 7-year-olds and beating up and trying to harass elderly women and men on public transportation. And as a result of those horrible policies, average working class Americans, the same people that I think these two co-panelists would probably say that they have a lot of empathy for, are forced to suffer the brunt and the negative ramifications of policies that lead to criminals who need to be in jail or insane asylums, plaguing public transportation, especially in New York.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let me go to Brianna. Brianna, I've seen people coming out saying the most ridiculous things about the case. There is zero evidence that there was any racial motivation whatsoever for Daniel Penny's actions. There's zero evidence of him ever being any kind of white supremacist. And the interview he gave last night, he's a publicity shy guy. He doesn't want to get involved in anything like that, who's had his life nearly destroyed by what happened, but says he would do it all over again in the same circumstances. We used to salute people like this. We used to literally give them awards for public service. Why is he being vilified?
So I'm not interested in doing identity politics. That's not my game. I wasn't interested in talking about the race in the other vigilante case, and I'm not especially interested in talking about race in this one. I think, as is often the case when race is evoked in the United States of America, the underlying issue is really class, and this very much is a class issue. This is a person, Jordan Neely, who was clearly in the middle of a mental health episode, who was loud, who was threatening, who was making very grievous threats that I think sincerely scared people in the subway. Look, I'm from New York, Piers. I know what it feels like to feel intimidated by someone who is having some kind of mental episode or is just a violent person in a subway car. And I think it's legitimate to feel afraid, to want to move to the other end of the car like so many passengers did, to want to get off at the next stop, to even call the police. I think what's really unconscionable is that New York City has a $6 billion police budget, and there never seems to be an officer who's actually trained to de-escalate these kinds of situations in the car where they need to. They're out standing at the turnstiles trying to spend tens of thousands of dollars of salary to catch subway invaders who've stolen $2 a bipartisan change by jumping over the turnstile. I think the critical issue here is the question of how Penny intervened. I think the idea of wanting to intervene to de-escalate and prevent harm from coming to your fellow passengers is heroic. But the question is whether or not he used proportional force and whether he should be responsible if the way that he intervened with physical force before, to be clear, Jordan Neely did anything physical that resulted in the death of Jordan Neely should have legal implications or what.
Exactly. And that's such a good point she makes about the police. We spend so much on our police. It's ridiculous in New York alone. But instead of there being a cop on the subway car to, like, you know, just make sure stuff like this isn't happening, they go and they hang out by the turnstile so they can assault people who jump the turnstile. It's ridiculous.
Whether we should incentivize as a public, just like I'm sure you don't want to incentivize vigilante shooters like Luigi, whether we should incentivize as a public Marines who are trained in the art of killing to go around taking matters into their own hands in a way that leads to the death of our fellow citizens.
So just to be clear, before I go to Clay to respond to that, you would have preferred to wait for potentially Jordan Neely to commit an act of violence before Daniel Penny intervened.
That's not what she said.
I don't think that you can, you yourself, use violence against someone first. I think that that's a golden rule that we learn in the elementary school, that you don't put your hands on other people.
So you would have preferred him to wait to see if he attacked a woman or a child or whatever, and then it would be okay.
Not at all, Piers. I'm glad you asked for clarification. I think that Daniel Penny could have put his body between Jordan Neely and the other passengers, could have put his hands up, tried to de-escalate, and myriad ways that I think we could imagine someone with proper training, like a police officer or a mental health professional, would have done. But I'm asking you, Piers, is it impossible for you to imagine a kind of de-escalation that didn't result in the strange
death
of a mentally ill person?
Well, listen, I'll come to Clay now. I mean, Clay, I wasn't there, you weren't there, none of it.
Literally, though, that's how they talk about it. They never talk about it like de-escalation is an option. They're always like, oh, no, of course not. We had to kill him. Hold on, guys.
Of us were there. And we do know it was all over in 6 minutes. He did it waiting for the police to arrive. He apparently applied a military technique where he applied pressure, then he took pressure off, then he applied pressure again. And that's a technique they use for restraining people, which is what the military are taught and trained to do. And clearly something went wrong. We don't know if it was affected by the fact that Jordan Neely was high on drugs and whether that affected things. We just don't know, right? What we do know is he died. That is a tragedy, and I feel absolute empathy for him and for everyone involved in that. And I feel it for Daniel Penny. But I don't see what Daniel Penny did wrong. He was trying to protect people.
Well, neither does the jury.
Right.
Neither does the jury, Piers. And I think that's the big takeaway here. This was a racially diverse jury in New York City that looked at all the evidence surrounding Daniel Penny, and they unanimously said this guy did absolutely nothing wrong from a criminal context. I think it's a signature victory for people who want there to be a form of law and order in New York City. I think it's important to recognize that if you couldn't get a conviction, if Alvin Bragg couldn't get a conviction on this case in New York City, it means virtually every jury in the entire nation would have said that there was no crime at all that was committed here by Daniel Penny. I also think it's important, you asked a good question, because there have been, and there are, people who are saying Daniel Penny is an evil white supremacist who needs to spend the rest of his life in prison, and they're simultaneously having hot flashes over the killer of the United Healthcare CEO.
Exactly.
And how do you analyze that? To me, it all comes down to intent. Their brains are broken because what we examine in the law is the intent here.
Yeah.
Daniel Penny's intent when he got on the subway that day was not to do anything at all other than take a ride to wherever he was going. And then he felt compelled to act because he saw an issue of violence arise and he felt like he needed to protect the people that were on that subway car. And the flip side, the killer of the United Healthcare CEO traveled there and in cold blood planned, plotted, and executed as an assassin would, a man he shot with his back against him that never saw the moment that he would be killed. The intent is one, first-degree murder. The intent in the other is try to prevent a potential murder or violent act. They aren't in any way similar, and it really boggles my mind, Piers, that anyone could even try and analogize the two, because, again, the only way you could come up in that scenario with that situation and in any way analogize them is if you are functionally incapable of applying basic logic.
Let me bring Vijaya in here. Vijaya, hang on, let Vijaya respond.
I missed.
I just want to give a response just for people watching why there's a series of responses from a lot of individuals, right? Especially when it comes to people of color, not just people of color, some white people, because they understand the history of America, systemic violence against people of color, especially black people, by white men, that goes unpunished. I agree with a lot of people that I don't think Daniel Penny, Perry, wanted to kill Jordan Neely. Facts matter. Jordan Neely, according to all the eyewitnesses, did not touch a single person. Yes, he was acting erratic. He threw his jacket. He yelled. He screamed. He said, "I don't care if I live or die." One woman in particular said that she feared that he might have made a lunging motion. That's when he took him in a chokehold. I believe that chokehold lasted too long, 6 minutes. He was killed. There was someone in the video who said he can't breathe. He can't breathe. Neely, the street performer whose mother was killed and stuffed in a suitcase, and after that he had a mental breakdown. He was found not with a gun or a knife. You know what I found in his pocket? A muffin. Before any of the details came out, though, the right wing celebrated this man and this murder, right? The right wing also celebrated the guy, Daniel Perry, the other veteran who killed an unarmed white man. The right wing also celebrated.
You're being a bit disingenuous, Jai, and I'll tell you why.
No, wait.
Well, hang on.
I'm going to tell you this way. Go ahead. Just let me finish.
Okay, you finish, and I'll tell you why you're being disingenuous.
Sure, please. Why am I being... Okay, so Kyle Rittenhouse, also acquitted, celebrated as a hero. The violent insurrectionists, mostly white, celebrated as heroes.
Yeah.
So you see a double standard here, and a lot of people see oh, this keeps happening when there's a white man or certain white people who kill black folks. Like example like this, Ahmaud Arbery, a modern day lynching in Georgia. This man was guilty while running black in his neighborhood. He was just jogging in his neighborhood. 3 white men lynched him.
Yeah, terrible story.
The DA at the time, twice, Piers, refused to bring up charges. The only reason we know about it is a local attorney released the video.
And then they're now in prison for life. Look, the reality here is the only reason Daniel Penny got charged
keeps happening again and again. That's all I'm saying.
Was because he was white.
The only reason why the guys ended up getting in trouble for the lynching of Ahmaud Arbery was because of the backlash. Like they weren't planning on even prosecuting them at first.
The only reason they charged him in New York City. If this had been a black guy doing what Daniel Penny did, there would have been no charges brought. If he had been choking a white guy, there would have been no charges brought.
Let me make this point.
This was identity politics.
Let me make this point to Wajaya.
No, shut
you make up. The guy just had a muffin on him, right? I mean, what was the need to do what?
This clown is literally doing nothing but identity politics while continuing to attack other people, accusing them of doing identity politics. Shut the fuck up.
But you did. Well, okay. He had a 42 arrest record from 2013 to 2021. So that's an 8 year.
Nobody knew that at the time? Nobody knew that.
Hang on.
No one on the card knew that.
No, I'm just talking about the reality of who Jordan Neely was and what his record was, right?
Right, but the subjective reality in the car is what matters.
Hang on, let me finish. Allow me to finish. You may not want to hear it, but allow me to finish.
Right, this is insane. First of all, people wouldn't have known like that he had a criminal record. Second of all, I like how he's like, have you guys noticed that this is giving very much, do you condemn Hamas? Like the way he keeps trying to force them into like, yeah, but what about the rich CEO? What about the rich CEO? Like it's giving, do you condemn Hamas energy? Like not allowing them to like talk about what's actually going on and just demanding that they agree with him.
Right. In 2015, he was arrested for attempting to kidnap a 7-year-old girl after dragging her down a street. In 2021, he punched a 67-year-old woman as she left a subway station in Lower Manhattan. She got a broken nose, a fractured orbital bone, bruising, swelling, substantial pain in the back of her head in the attack. He pleaded guilty. From January 2020 to August 2021, he was arrested for public lewdness after pulling his pants down, exposing himself to a female stranger, misdemeanor assault for hitting a woman in the face, criminal contempt for violating a restraining order. All 3 cases were then dealt with. This is a guy with a prolonged history of violence, attempted kidnap. Appalling stuff, right? He's not just a guy carrying it. He's not some innocent homeless. He's not. Hang on. He's not just some innocent homeless guy clutching a muffin, right? He's a violent guy.
On the day he was choked to death, he did not touch a single person, and he had.
But let's not pretend he was some kind of angel.
This is Piers. What I would say
on the day he was choked to death,
this is a failure.
Don't talk over each other.
And he's some kind of angel. This is
what I would say about
defending his murder. Let's not pretend he was some kind of angel. No one's pretending he was an angel. No one. No one's pretending he was an angel. People are not disputing that he had a criminal record. We are saying people on the train didn't know he had a criminal record, and neither did Daniel Penny. And he didn't have to kill him. Like, it's amazing. It is so amazing that Piers Morgan is literally here right now defending the murder of this Jordan Neely guy while pearl clutching that people don't care enough about what happened to the UHC CEO. This is a joke.
Brianna, wait a minute, please. If you talk over each other, we can't hear anyone. Listen, please allow me to bring in each guest when I want to, because otherwise the viewers can't hear a word anyone's saying. I hear this all the time from viewers. Like, get in there, Piers, because they all talk over each other. Clay, then I'll come to you, Brianna.
What I think you're laying out is actually a huge part of this story, Piers, which is the reason Daniel Penny felt compelled to act is because New York City has failed to take violent criminals off the streets despite their violent criminality. Yep. And that is why so many people, including Brianna herself, said they are nervous when they get on the subway in New York City where crime had skyrocketed. The context in which this occurred, the city of New York, which tried to put Daniel Penny in prison, actually failed not only Daniel Penny, but Jordan Neely. Because if they had adequately punished him for the violent acts that he had engaged in, he wouldn't have been on the subway that day, and there wouldn't have been any need at all for the vigilante act to the extent that it's vigilante in any way, which I don't believe it was, and the jury didn't find it was. This is a symptom of the failure of not only New York City, but many other big left-wing blue city, blue state decisions when it comes to prosecuting violent crimes. They lead to more violent crimes, and we end up in situations like these, which never should have occurred. Jordan Neely shouldn't have been on the street that day. He should have been behind bars for his violent acts.
I agree, Brianna.
Well, let me use the exact same logical formulation that our friend here just made. That Luigi Mangione had to act because our legal system and our political system has failed to address the overwhelming crisis of the U.S. health system. That's exactly how you framed it with respect to the vigilante killing of
that is not the same.
Because the state had not
intervened.
Am I allowed to finish?
Disagree with someone.
Yeah, let Brianna finish her point, then I'll bring you in, Natalie. Natalie, I'll bring you in after Brianna. Let Brianna finish her point.
Yeah, I'm not making the argument, but I am parroting exactly the framing that the gentleman there just used. That because the state didn't intervene in the way that he thinks they should have intervened with Jordan Neely. And I agree, and by the way, I agree that the state failed him, not because I think they need to lock mentally ill people up forever and throw away the key, but because we have another crisis in America that's related to this healthcare crisis, that is a healthcare crisis with respect to not having enough social support for people who are having mental health crisis. Jordan Neely's inability to get the medication that affected his mood, that brought his mood down, is a significant part of the story and comes right back to the healthcare CEO situation. But if you understand, if you believe that it can be a vigilante killing that is justified in your view on the subway, I think you have to look deep within yourself and ask why you're doing so much hand-wringing about the public outcry, the public celebration, John, again, however you want to describe it, about the CEO killing when the CEO is responsible.
Because one meant to do it and the other one didn't.
Then Jordan Neely can't ever imagine.
Hang on. All right, let me bring it. I want to bring it.
Has a history of violence.
No, she's absolutely right. She's absolutely right. She is. This is what I mean. She's very good at this. That was a great point. So it's all, oh, well, it was okay that Daniel Penny did this because the system in New York failed. But then when it comes to the United Healthcare CEO and people not caring about that, it's all the same thing as the system failed. The system is failing. It's amazing. It's truly amazing. That was a very good, I'll end it there because that was pretty much the last like interesting part or thing that quoting there. But that was very good. That was very good. Wow, they're such hacks. They're such hacks. Yeah, they really do want to make it about the culture wars. They are desperate to make this about a culture war shit and identity politics, as Clay Travis was trying to do, and not talk about healthcare. They do not. First of all, own Brianna Joy Gray, crushed them, crushed their asses. Yeah, that wasn't even close. She owned them with facts and logic. Destroyed. Brianna Joy Gray destroys bootlicking Zionist lackey, Clay Travis or whatever the fuck his name is. Yeah. Yeah, honestly, it was like, I know. It wasn't even close. It wasn't even close. Yeah, it was interesting to see just how desperate they were to try to make it about the culture war. Anything to not talk about healthcare. They are getting scared. That is absolutely true. They're getting scared that they feel that their tricks are having diminishing returns. Yeah, exactly. It's the same logic, which is why it was very, I think, appropriate and smart to bring that up, that Brianna brought that up. Because, yeah, you could literally say the same thing about Luigi. Oh, well, he had to intervene. The state and private health insurance companies have failed the American public. All of our institutions have failed us to do anything about the grotesque healthcare system we live under. Oh, yeah, of course. They will always do anything to not talk about class. They do not want to talk about class. No. They never want to talk about class. In fact, they use identity politics and culture war bullshit to make it so that they never have to talk about class. And I know some people will say like, oh, well, that's being a class reductionist. Like, no, actually, it's not. I would never say that intersectionality doesn't matter, that race doesn't matter, that identity doesn't matter. Of course they do. But to only ever focus on race or gender or whether or not somebody like is, I don't know, I'm losing my train of thought now because now I'm starting to get really tired. But to only focus on culture war things or identities, like whether or not somebody is trans or black, you are being a race reductionist. If you're only focusing on race, you are being a, what do you call this? Gender reductionist? If you're only focusing on gender, like I actually believe in, bye Blanca, in actually confronting all of those things. It's that these people only want to focus on identity so they don't have to focus on class. And then they turn around and they call other people class reductionists. Like, shut the fuck up. All right, you guys, I've been on for over 3 hours. First of all, I want to give a special shout out to the incredible people who gave me incredibly generous super chats in this stream. I especially appreciate it because they were just the handful of the ones that I got, and they were really great. And I'm really, really grateful for that. So to Gangrene Thumb and shout out to Gangrene Thumb for the incredible generosity during the stream. Shout out to Betty Julius for the incredible generosity in this stream. And where's the other one? There was another one. Oh, I guess it was those two. And shout out to everybody who also gave me super chats, even the smaller ones. I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you so much to everybody who is a member on YouTube or who is a member on Ko-Fi or Patreon. Thank you so much for supporting my work, for supporting me through Venmo or through any other avenue that you may support me through. By the way, my Cash App is the same handle as it is on everything else. I am Blakeley. So somebody earlier in chat asked me why I didn't have Cash App. I do. It's at I am Blakeley if you want to donate to my Cash App.